Ready to get started?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Now let's start with the personnel updates.
So, we talked a little bit, just working to finish filling some of our vacancies on the next board agenda that you will see. Specifically, we have some custodial individuals coming in. We're able to fill some of the special needs openings, and we're working to finalize some of our part-time educational assistants. Those are lunchroom and playground. You'll also be seeing, I believe, I'm not sure if it's the remainder, but a portion of the science of reading reimbursements will be on this agenda for payouts.
It's not the remainder.
No, there's many more to go.
Yeah, right, yeah.
They have
There's
until
two
The
more.
next
June
round.
25.
Yeah, there's 2 more rounds that they
Okay.
can submit for.
So typical.
But it's been pretty steady, like,
The first round, we did get a large number of people.
yeah,
that
because it would have been
submitted.
over the summer.
Yeah, I haven't checked to see where right now, but yeah, there's still a batch that are.
If I had to guess,
hanging.
this is the dip, and we'll have a little bit more of a
And
dip.
then
You may
rush
get
next
some over
year.
the winter break, but
Yeah.
then the majority of them will come right before the deadline.
Right,
Yeah.
this is the reimbursement for taking that training. Okay.
And then at one of the HR conferences I attended, and I think Chris was at a superintendent conference, they are promoting a new military recruitment award. It's a pretty nice program. So I have shared it with those veterans that I know we have recently hired. They actually get in total a reimbursement or award of $4,500 once they are hired and complete a year of service with us.
Right.
The nice thing is it is going retroactive back to, I believe that they were hired after July 1st of 2023. So we actually have a small handful that we hired right around the beginning of the 23-24 school year that are eligible.
Okay.
The district also gets $1,500 for each of those individuals. So I'm working with Gary and Mike to see, what we can do with those funds, where the funds will come from. There is an initial fee that we need to front the $3,000 per individual hired, and then we are reimbursed that same amount after they complete the year of service.
Okay.
So getting through the first couple applicants, I do believe it'll hopefully move pretty quickly. I think the turnaround time, we're probably looking at a month or two once applications are in, so we're starting that process.
Mhm.
Could you kind of go over that again now?
Yeah.
You're hiring ex-military people, they apply for jobs and they have that background. And so if they stick with it, they get a bonus from the government
Yes.
to them.
Yep.
And then, but our cost, we have initial cost to get them in line, but then we're reimbursed later.
Correct.
Okay, so, and that can be for any kind of job, any kind of military background?
Any kind of job, so anyone that has been honorably discharged, and the only caveat from the employment side is that this has to be their first time being employed in an Ohio public school. So a lot of our school security officers or safety officers have just retired from the forces, and they're retired from sheriff's office, yes, but they also have military background, so it's their first time entering a public school as an employee, so it makes
So they
them
would
eligible.
qualify for that.
Yeah,
Okay.
the nice thing is this is also extended to military spouses. So
Oh.
it's a great recruitment tool in my mind.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Great.
Thank you.
Yeah. And then the last thing, pretty light on the personnel side right now, we are proposing a resolution be added to the November agenda. This is an update from Section 4 of Senate Bill 1. So previously, in December of 2021, we approved allowing individuals that do not hold a bachelor's degree to become a teaching substitute with us. That was part of this bill at that time. That extended through the subsequent school years up until last year. So we have been practicing this since December of 2021. It's very beneficial to us because the people that we're typically able to capture is our student teachers that are with us. So they're just finishing up their student teaching, and they haven't graduated, they haven't taken their final test to apply for that bachelor's degree yet. So this update with the Senate bill now includes our student teachers are given a pre-service teaching permit, and it acts the same as a substitute license does through the State Board of Education. So this just adds that piece of that pre-teacher service permit. We actually have one situation right now that could benefit us pretty greatly getting this approved. We have a teacher going out on leave, and she's had a student teacher with her in the classroom all year so far, and that student teacher is graduating this summer, can take right over. I was
Now, are
gonna-
they done with their school, like at their college or university? So it's
Wrapping
not a
up.
conflict there?
It's not a conflict at that point, they're just finishing up their student teaching
Okay,
hours.
so that's their final thing anyway.
Correct.
Okay, yeah, that was pretty common practice.
Yeah.
I saw through John Carroll, I supervised student teachers, and many of them finished out the year, especially with the end of COVID, at Orange and other places,
Yeah.
Shaker.
So it really does help us.
Yeah.
Student teacher placements through the years, I think it's just good to know, coming out of COVID, the numbers were about a dozen that year, and when we did initially approve it in 21-22. Since then, we've had roughly about 25 students each school year that we do place as student teachers, so
Oh, that's
that's a
great.
huge pool of subs.
I'm
that
so
we could be
glad you
working
take
with.
care of that now.
Yeah.
Because that used to be my responsibility. It was a lot.
And this
So
is a
that's-
good way to
that's-
vet them if they're a future hire.
Right.
Well,
and-
it's a long interview.
Yeah.
Which is really nice for
Yeah.
us too.
For
And
sure.
The specifics here on the Senate bill is that if we're hiring someone without the bachelor's degree, we actually do, we interview them. They're still employed through our ESC in Northeast Ohio, just like a substitute. We contract out all of our substitutes. But we do the initial hiring process. We make sure there's someone that we want to work with in the district.
Right.
The student teaching piece is just a bonus that we have known them and been working with them for some time.
Okay, great.
Have you had any come in without that background, just come in fresh?
So we do have several, they're actually employees that may be part-time with us that don't have bachelor's degrees, that we also have them working under the non-degree substitute with us for teaching. It's, you know, they just have more variety and flexibility in what they can do. So we have a few, that's our caveat. Either you have to be student teaching with us or you need to be employed in another capacity that would allow you to take a type of placement like that.
I see, okay.
But they go through all the same, I am noticing on the back,
Oh, yeah.
all the same types of clearances. Yeah, okay, great.
That's all that I have.
All right, we will move into board agenda review, and a couple of items we'll talk about in more detail, but you know, we have our monthly financial reports as always, and then we have our November 5-year forecast, which we'll go over separately here in a little bit, and we'll present during my report at the meeting. There is a revision to a contract with the ESC of Northeast Ohio, basically adding, we have an interpreter that we're hiring through the ESC of Northeast Ohio, and so we just had to update the agreement for that. We also have the termination of a service contract with the ESC of Western Reserve. We will talk about that here as well separately. There is the contract for PSI to add the part-time health aide to Riverview Elementary School for the remainder of this year, so that contract's on here. I think we talked about that previously at another meeting. We have a purchase order for fuel that we approve every quarter for $120,000. And then there's another item on here for AI for All. It's a tech course that was taken in over the summer.
It's taken, we're running them through, it's through a grant, we pay it and we get reimbursed.
Okay,
Yeah, it's all reimbursable.
Yeah, and there might be an addition to that, because they're just did another one in October
Yes.
31st, I think, so maybe we get that.
okay.
There's a few of the now certificates where there's a purchase over $3,000, there's not a PO in place, so some of those need cleaned up. And then a couple donations on here, $2,250 from the Parkside PTO for library books, and then another $14,700 from RLEF as they close out their books and transfer the funds over to the district. That's the gist of the board agenda as of today.
There will not be a school presentation at this one because of the late start.
Yeah,
There will be a special presentation, Deputy Ellen Ward, the
Oh, yeah.
SSO from Riverview will be there.
Right.
So we will recognize him
That's
at
great.
the beginning of the meeting, and then there are 2 work sessions added.
2 work sessions?
Yes. One to talk about board communications, as discussed at the last one, and then one to truly take a deep dive into the facilities, the draft of the facilities plan before we finalize it.
Okay, so this is in a, like, that will be, the work session will be in this board
It'll be
meeting?
embedded in the meeting.
Okay, so, because we had a work session at the beginning of December, right?
This will be, these are scheduled at the end.
Oh, I see,
But yes.
okay. So facilities and, what was the other one?
Facilities and board communication process.
Does that mean December 5th is coming up? Or we don't know yet?
I don't know yet. There's
Okay,
a board member who's out of town during that time frame.
oh, okay.
I'm assuming we'll discuss that more
Okay.
at the regular meeting. Okay, meeting items on our agenda for today, I'm gonna jump around a little bit. We talked about that Ohio Department of Development Energy Grant. We were working with that vendor, Gardner, to work through that process. I haven't heard from them, and just in my discussions, I'm not having the best feeling about it at the moment, so I'm
Mhm.
thinking that's just, we're gonna let that one go for now.
Right,
And, you know, 'cause it's one of those things where I'm never a fan of spending money to try to get a grant, and it's, you know, if we don't get a grant, we spent $13,000 on something that we didn't necessarily need to spend that money on. So I think at this point, between that and everything else we have going on with facilities, it's just, I think I'm gonna take that one off the table at this point.
Will are those something that are kind of ongoing, or was this kind of a one-time?
I think they're ongoing, I think there'll be another one.
So we can always
in the
pick
future.
something up in the future?
Yeah.
Okay.
The ESC service contract, so, I don't know, Chris, if you wanted to kind of talk to this one a little bit, or you want me to kind of?
Yeah, we, so per state law, there are only certain times when you can, you know, basically look at ESCs. It used to be you had to be a member of the ESC of the county that you, are in.
Mhm.
They had, a while ago, they had changed that law
2012, I think
to,
they did.
yeah, to kind of look to do some consolidating of some of these smaller ESCs,
Mhm.
as well as to provide districts with the best services that they can. I think we are looking from our standpoint, this is it's only on, you have to, it's even use of plea that you can let them know that you are searching and you have to enter into it or not.
Right, basically, if you want to make a change, you have to give notice by December 31st of, like, this year, 2024, that you'll be making a change effective July 1 of 2025.
Historically, we've worked with Lake County kind of combined with Geauga County to form the ESC, the Western Reserve. In working with them and some of their services, and even some of the other schools that they offer, they don't necessarily provide all of the services that we use. And we've worked and kind of shopped some of our services and worked and paid for services through the ESC, the NEO. The way that it works is for students, we get kind of credits back to spend on services at the ESC. What we're finding is some of the services at NEO might be better served, and actually of even better value if we look at going to NEO. So we signed a 1-year deal last year, paying a little bit more of a service fee to give us this flexibility to really take a look and do some shopping as to what kind of services we can find, get the best value. We know that other districts have joined Western Reserve and gotten even a better deal than we have. And we've been there for a little while, been loyal, and, you know, as always, you're not always kind of treated with loyalty.
It's like the cable TV model.
I wanna say
Yeah.
Verizon,
So,
yeah.
yeah, so in looking at what we provide, and how we can spend our credits, we currently use our substitute services through ESC of NEO. It would be an easy kind of wrap over, where we don't have to worry about it. Some of the services we provide gets us into sometimes some challenging situations, because they do go to special ed, but they don't count for maintenance of effort, and that's kind of a federal diagnosis, way that you're spending special ed funds, so it could get us into some risky issues. And so I think we want to really pursue whether we stay with Western Reserve or whether we go with NEO, and have a good model kind of coming out of this where we feel. Both of them offer either satellites or they come to us. Actually, NEO will, will come to us for a lot of things. Some of the data services that they provide are, top ranks. We pay for them now, but they would be kind of included with our membership to them. One of them being this state test dashboard that's done through Microsoft BI that comes out through us. It's amazing. It has historically all the released questions, how our students have fared on them, and we can really take a deep dive into curriculum works with that. So, and even the people who kind of go through some of these, breakouts of state report cards and all of that, what has changed and the specific information that has been there. NEO kind of has those people who are there, and are very knowledgeable and tops in the area. And so we are looking to really see what's the best fit for us, and not just based on what's been our past and tradition. So I think it's
Yeah, we had former discussion before about like certain ties that we didn't think we could break, and financial obligation, which we would assign certain things to meet that, but then not spend any more. Am I correct? Because that was when I first got on board. So, but I guess, how was that tied to, for example, the joint financing district, which aren't they the ones that?
for now,
On that.
we have 5 years to figure that out, considering we were successful with it.
Okay,
So that gives us an opportunity to, like I said, go out through the water, see what it's like. Contracts are typically 2 years.
okay,
So we have some time to really kind of have that and feel that out. If we needed to be the fiscal agent, we could be the fiscal agent for it. It doesn't have to be. It was assigned to Western Reserve, but it doesn't always have to be that. We've talked with NEO about that. They've kind of given us some ideas too, where they can help as well along that matter. So I think those are all things we've considered moving forward. I think really we need to make the decision that's best for our students and staff, and our situation. If we can get a better services for the same cost or even less. One of the differences when you put your credits towards something, they don't charge NEO does not charge a service fee, Western Reserve does. So there's a little bit of difference too, where we may get some things a little bit more efficiently.
So maybe just to expand on the credit, so basically, both ESCs have the same, similar pricing now. So basically, whatever ESC that a district aligns to, they get funding. There's funding that's deducted from us at, I think it's $6.50 a student that gets deducted from our funding, it goes to that ESC, but also that ESC that you're aligned to gets funding directly from the state that you're a member of. And it's much more, it used to be $22.50 or something like that per student. Now they're phasing a new formula and they're year 4 of the phase, and so it's not as, it's pretty muddy exactly what they get, but basically, so the ESC gets about $100,000 from us being a member with them, and they give us back 90% of that as a credit towards services. And
okay,
so,
I see, okay.
so with the ESC Western Reserve, when you use that credit towards services, they're still charging that admin fee, which this year is 6% on top of everything, where the ESC Northeast Ohio doesn't charge that at all
Doesn't
if you
do
use
that.
that credit. The other issue we run into with, and Dr. Rutino kind of mentioned a little bit, but maybe just expand upon it, and like most of the services we use through the ESC Western Reserve are for special ed services at this point, and
They're extremely limited.
They're
In fact, I don't
limited.
really access a lot of their programming at all. I
Mhm.
actually am looking at accessing programming through the ESC of Northeast Ohio for a couple of students that just moved into our district.
Right.
The only exception would be, we do have the vocational coordinator that is through the ESC of Western Reserve. But we have significantly reduced the number of days that we have her contracted for.
And so one of the challenges we run into, if we're using our credit towards special ed services, with federal funding, there's a thing called maintenance of effort, where you have to maintain the same amount of spending each year from year to year. So you can't just cut special ed costs. You have to maintain that same level of
Right.
support. So if you use your credit towards those special ed services, you don't meet your maintenance of effort.
Yeah.
And we did that in the first year they started this model. We did that because they were behind, and we had a year and a half of credits, and then we used it toward the psychs, and then all of a sudden, at the end of the fiscal year, the state's like, you didn't meet your maintenance of effort. Well,
It's the
Yeah.
craziest
They-
thing, I always tell
it-
Gary,
it's
I'm
the-
in like this catch-22, if I try to save money
Yeah.
and develop our own programming, then I'm still like,
Mhm.
I'm slapped in the hand because I haven't
Yeah.
met maintenance of effort.
Mhm.
It's only in the world of federal funding can you lose money by
Yes, I
saving
know.
money.
It's really,
So.
there's a good one.
Crazy.
So if we were aligned with ESC of Northeast Ohio, we could use that credit just towards substitute teachers, and then we don't have to worry about maintenance of effort and all that stuff, because that's not special ed related service.
So there are other school districts, I'm, off the top of my head, I'm thinking Chardon, Mentor, there are others that do.
Chardon, Mentor, Will Eastic is in the same situation as we are. They're a little bit different. They
Okay.
switched to the ESC of the Western Reserve for the last 2 years.
Okay.
And in fact, when they went in, they were given, they're the district who had a significantly more lucrative deal than we did.
Yeah.
Which, again, back to the Verizon model, I was not really pleased about.
Mhm.
But then they are considering moving back as well, and they're in the same situation that we are.
Okay,
There are other districts throughout, most of Geauga County is with them, with the exception of West G.
Berkshire.
And
Just
Berkshire's moving to them though, I think.
I've
So-
heard rumors that they.
so West
Yeah.
G's with NEO.
West G is with Western Reserve. The
Oh,
rest of,
Western.
the rest of most,
Chardon,
Kents.
Kenston.
Chardon, Kenston,
um,
Oh, okay,
yeah.
Cardinal.
all right. I see.
A lot of, yeah.
Yeah, Berkshire is Northeast Ohio, and Cardinal's Western Reserve.
Cardinal's the Western Reserve.
Okay.
Is Cardinal moving?
I don't think so.
I don't think Cardinal is, I think, and so
And
there's
then
been a lot.
Lake County, it's
Yeah.
Mentor and Wickliffe and Kirtland are with Northeast Ohio, and then Will Eastlake's the one that left, and then they came back, and they're in the same situation that we are right now.
Yeah.
Mhm. Hmm. Okay. So, I mean, do we need to look at financial information
There's
regarding
not- I
this
mean,
decision, or?
It's
It's
not
pretty
even a,
much-
well, it's kind of where we decide that, in this
Mhm.
case, we're the vendor, we're looking at kind of both and services and
Mhm.
and what we have to offer and what makes more sense. The other part that's different with NEO as opposed to Western Reserve, our credits that we earn, we can put them to almost anything.
Yeah,
So there's a little bit more open, and if I'm speaking wrong, they're pretty open, whereas they're a lot more restricted at the Western Reserve.
right.
So it does give us we run into more issues. So having, and moving into into a new situation, we would still use Western Reserve for certain things. We
Yeah.
have to use them for services at the juvenile courts when they provide services, educational services to a student, they will bill us back for
Okay.
those sorts of things. So we will still have some relationships with them, but our primary relationships will be with NEO if we took that. So
Well,
we
and they're doing our subs.
They do ourselves.
They do
Yeah.
ourselves.
And Northeast Ohio allows you to, you don't even have to spend it on services, like if you wanted to buy Chromebooks, you wanted to buy a school bus, they'll buy it for you using your credit. And
Oh, okay.
you could even, so there's
Okay.
even flexibility
Yeah.
on
And
just.
they are,
Right.
and they do have because they are much larger, they have a lot more purchasing power. They have a
Mhm.
lot, those sorts of things are there with them. They do a lot more with specific PLCs, that you don't see at Western Reserve. There's a curriculum director's PLC. There's a special ed or wellness PLC. That they offer.
Yeah,
There's an
that's-
HR one that's pretty
Mhm.
specific that we already send people to, and we're
Right.
a part of these. And we would just continue on with that.
Okay.
So.
Is
Good
is
to
there a
know.
membership fee to these different organizations?
No, it's basically your,
To your
it's that service fee they charge on top of the services.
Okay.
And so Northeast Ohio is 5%. Western Reserve, it's 5% if you do a 2-year contract or 6% for one. So we were paying 5, but we're paying 6% this year on all the services. But then, as we mentioned before, with the credit, the Northeast Ohio doesn't charge that 5% on what you use
Right.
for your credit, but on Western Reserve we do. So right there, you're talking 5 to 6% of about $100,000, so $5,000 to $6,000 savings. We already know right there.
Is that about what you spend at each,
I would say it's more. Yeah, I would say we'd spend, and we would still use both. We still have to utilize both. There are some services we can't get. We actually even utilize the one from Summit County. Our personalized learning person who we really like works out of Summit. So we
Summit.
bring him. So we pay for Summit to kind of,
Yeah, we
work
use-
with that. So
We use Jefferson County for the
Jefferson County
virtual
for our
academy,
virtual learning. I mean, we
and
shop
Asheville
around.
is good for transportation in-service training, things like that, so.
So you have a lot of options and
We
you're not
do,
tied into
we do.
one.
We may use Western Reserve. I think we use them for our student teacher, our not, our new teacher wrestling program. So we may continue with them, or we may look to see what ESC of NEO has. I think for our base and kind of make it a little bit easier, it makes more sense to kind of look and shop.
Oh, absolutely.
But then also, you know, to really, when you have the economy of scale that's there
Yeah.
at NEO.
Well
it-
aware.
Yeah, I mean, and you know, there are just services that we pay for now that we would get, you know, as being a member, we get with them. So it does save us there, but then also just the access to the networks that they have.
The quality.
And the quality
Yeah.
is so much more robust than what
Right.
you have at Western Reserve. And I think that's, you know, as we continue to shoot our goals up for academic excellence and also, you know, personalized learning, kind of doing that, we have more,
Right,
you know, even just the data people, the data-driven decisions
Yeah.
to make there. They have at least 3 people there who are specifically in this data network, and they're the leaders of the data network in the state.
yeah.
You know, so I think that's a real benefit they have as well.
And then the financing district is the only other issue out there, so the ESC is the fiscal agent of that, so wherever we put a renewal on the ballot, the 4 school districts and the ESC have to approve the same resolutions to put it back on for renewal. And so, rumor has it that years ago, another district was told, well, if you guys pull out the ESC, we won't put the levy back on the ballot, but that was under a different administration at the time, and different district, and, you know, if they were to do that in the future, well, if the other 3 districts are still aligned with Western Reserve and they decide not to put their levy on the ballot, not really good business practice on
No.
their end too. So there's some unknown there as far as how that would work, but you know, it's 5 years from now, so.
We just have to shop for the best service at the best place.
And that's really where we're at, and we'll see kind of what comes from it, and
Okay.
we have to make the best decision for Riverside.
Right, okay.
And then the last thing on the agenda is the 5-year forecast.
And just to back up 1 minute.
Sure.
So is there any action, like you said, by December?
So there's a motion, there's a resolution to send notice to them that we are looking to terminate the contract.
Okay,
And to start shopping, that's this one that has to come, and we will serve that, we will let them know. And then the second part will be the second motion to adopt whoever at that point we select.
okay. And is that happening at this board?
No, that is not till,
That's not.
that will be next year, probably around, that's probably February, March, yeah.
The state recommends that you do it by March 15th, if you make a change, that way they can get their systems recoded and send
Okay.
funds to the right ESC. All right, 5-year forecast. Made a few slight tweaks from that preview I showed at the previous board meeting. Looking at from the revenue side, I know it's a lot to look at, but for the general property taxes, we're assuming a 28% valuation increase. I have a presentation that Auditor Galloway had presented at a commissioner meeting earlier this summer, and his projection was about 29.7 for Riverside School District. We used 28 in May, being conservative using 28 again, because we know there was a big informal process to review those values, and things have probably changed a little bit, and I'm not sure how much they've changed at this point, but nobody fights the increase the value, they're only gonna fight the decrease, so the number would probably go down from 29.7 to somewhere between, you know, I'm still thinking 28 is a conservative number. Obviously, we'll know more later in December. We'll get what's called Schedule A from the county auditor. It has our valuation for this tax year. We can do some more analysis, but the true test will be when the tax collections come in February and March of 2025. And we'll kind of see where those are heading. I did fix, there was a formula error in fiscal year 29 with the forecast model. We used K-12 Consulting, and they have a model they put together, and I noticed that they were accounting for 2 triennial updates in the future years instead of 1. I think just an Excel error. So, we took that out, so it's calculating more correctly. So we're assuming a 28% now, and then in 3 years, we're using 8% as an estimate. That's more in line with typical of valuation increase on a triennial update. But are we at a overinflated high? Will we go down at that point? It's kind of anybody's guess at this point, but we'll adjust in future years.
So 28% is conservative, it could be more depending on collection. Is that what you're talking about?
No, I mean, in 3 years from now, in the next
Yeah,
valuation.
on the 3-year, yeah.
So-
Yeah, because there's this one that we're getting, and then there's the 3-year coming.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, and then, let's see, so the auditor used 29.74, but we're using 28 to be conservative.
Yes.
Okay,
Public utility property tax, that's pretty much, no changes expected there, pretty much be slightly increase a little bit each year. Unrestricted grants and aid, which is our federal funding, we're on the Fair School funding plans being implemented, we're in year 4 of that right now. We're on a guarantee, so basically when the new formula went into place, our funding would have gone down without the guarantee. The guarantee guarantees you don't get less funding than you did in 2019. As that formula continues to get phased in, we don't really anticipate much of a change there in the future. And with the way state revenues and expenditures are trending right now, we're not 100% confident it'll be fully phased in the next biennium budget as originally intended. And so we'll kind of see how that goes. And even if it is, for us, it's a small percentage of our revenue, and we don't expect any major changes there. We could get a little bit more in transportation funding, but we'll see as the state budget comes out, I think in February of 2025. It's one of those things, every biennium budget, the governor comes out with his, and then it goes to the House, and it goes to the Senate, then it goes to conference committee, and pretty much June 30th, we find out, or right around there, what's your funding gonna be July 1st. So it's, sometimes it's after July 1st. There was 1 year they didn't sign the budget till sometime in July, but
okay.
We'll
When
get
you say
projections tomorrow.
transportation, is that for buses, is that for
It's-
related expense?
it's just overall transportation costs. So
Okay.
it's not specific for buses, it's more of just running of operations.
Okay.
Sometimes there's been bus funding. I
Okay.
think there was like a one-time thing, we got 50,000 for a bus, or 35,000 for a bus. I don't remember exactly what it was, but it's few and far between. So
Okay.
it's mostly just for your
Okay,
running your
How have
operations.
fuel costs been? Have they remaining steady or increasing, decreasing?
I think they've been pretty steady. Restricted grants and aid line, 672,000 for 2025, then you see it drops off again, and it was higher last year because we got the high-quality instructional materials payment. It's higher this year because of the stipend reimbursements for Science Week.
Oh, gotcha.
But in future years, it goes back to what we typically receive in a normal year. So you see a little spike there in that year, in 2025 and 2026, it goes back to normal. Line 1.05, state share of local property taxes, that's your homestead and rollback reimbursements from the state of Ohio. So those are pretty typical. They're obviously inflated a little bit from prior years because of the reappraisal. It also increases those reimbursements as the taxes increase. And then line 1.06, all our revenues, that includes interest income, the joint financing district, classroom fees, play participate fees, rental fees, damages, donations, anything else that doesn't fall in the other categories, pretty much goes there. And so you'll see it's down from last year a little bit because of declining interest rates and declining cash balance as we continue forward. So you'll see that number trend down a little bit going into future years. And then all other advances in, we don't typically forecast advances out and advances in. Typically those are determined at the end of the fiscal year to cover negative cash balances in the federal grant funds. And they'll basically wash out from year to year. So we typically don't forecast them until we know for sure. So this year we have 224,000. That was what we advanced out at June 30th of last year. Just the return happens in this fiscal year. And then all other financing sources is our catastrophic, what's now called threshold cost reimbursement from the state of Ohio. For special ed related services, when a cost of a student exceeds a certain threshold, we submit what's called catastrophic or now threshold cost, and we get a reimbursement from the state. The percentage of reimbursement is based on what every district in the state of Ohio submits and how much money is available. So that number can vary wildly from year to year, and it's kind of a shot in the dark, because, you know, you never know what your special ed costs will end up being. If you have a high-cost student that moves out of the district or graduates and they come off, you know, you didn't incur that cost, and now your reimbursement's gonna go down because you didn't have that cost to submit. So those things happen as well. So that number can be kind of volatile from year to year. But we can just forecast forward what we had in the prior year. So that's on the revenue side. On the expenditure side, obviously salaries and benefits are our largest pieces. With there's a little bit of shifting around because you'll notice like purchase services went down a little bit from the prior year, and that's because we hired in the school psychologist. Used to be contracted through the ESC, now they're on our books. So you'll see purchase services went down, salaries went up, and the salaries obviously went up because of step increases and negotiated salary increases per the union contracts. And then you know, the big elephant in the room is benefits. We all know about the 22% healthcare increase, so that's obviously being reflected in those numbers going forward. We did some communication pieces on our PD day talking about the difference in plan options available and employee contributions, trying to show employees if they change plans to a less rich plan per se, they can save money on their payroll contributions to that plan. And we're still in open enrollment through tomorrow. We'll see if anybody shifts, but as of right now, there's only, I think, 8 people have shifted, even though there's 180 on the plan, and probably a lot could save money if they switched. But we can't force them at this point because of the current contracts in place. We're also looking at exploring options as far as, do we stay in the consortium, do we leave the consortium? There's actually a consultant that I'm gonna see tomorrow at a professional development thing that has helped other districts change consortiums or pull out, and so I'm gonna pick his brain a little bit too. And then the consortium's also looked at, so they've restricted GLP-1 medications like your Ozempic and Wegovy and those type of weight loss drugs that are being covered, requiring employees going forward that you have to go through a weight loss program before you qualify to get those drugs. So we're expecting that to save the consortium money, which would result in
Well,
lower
that would
insurance
make
rates.
sense, wouldn't it? You know,
They put in a couple of like common sense things that you, in sitting in those meetings, you're like, why wasn't this done before?
right?
Yeah.
So there's a couple of those kind of cost savings where working and knocking some things out. It's hopefully gonna make some differences.
That pill doesn't always work wonders, you need to put a little work in it yourself.
And then you're still looking at health insurance.
Yeah, so we're basically planning for 2026. Because, you know, 2025, it's too late to make a change at this point, but,
Right.
you know, we'll explore our options and hopefully have something in place for 2026, whether that's status quo or making a change. So the consortium is making some changes to try to mitigate these issues, but we also have other options we can explore as well as a district. So purchase services, pretty standard stuff, our typical, you know, our substitute teachers are in there because they're contracted through ESC Northeast Ohio, utilities, repairs, you know, minor repairs per se. Supplies is elevated in 2025 because that's the purchase of the high quality instructional materials that we received funding for in last fiscal year as a timing thing. So that's why you see an increase there. The rest of that line item is your bus fuel and then just your typical supplies that you purchase each year. Capital outlay is always pretty minimal because we have a permanent improvement fund, that's where most of those items go through, which is not included in the forecast. We had the House Bill 264 loan, so those are just paying those off through the years. And then other objects is, the biggest piece of other objects is your property tax collection fees. So with the increase in revenue, that will go up a little bit, and then that includes legal fees and some, like, professional memberships, a few of the small items that
question.
Yeah.
It's not really supplies and materials, so, like, for example, Lamouth got a lot of new furniture. So what does that,
Those get purchased out of the permanent improvement fund, which.
that
are
was
not-
PI?
Yeah, so that's not.
So it's
included.
not on this?
Yeah.
Okay.
This is only general fund and the joint finance.
Okay, has there been furniture purchases for Melridge and Buckeye?
When teachers request them, they submit a form to me and their request. So so it comes as the teachers ask. I just sent on a request from a teacher from Buckeye, who's in the
Okay.
personalized learning cohort.
I think
Yeah.
there's a,
I know it was tied to personalized
it
learning.
is, it's tied to personalized learning and the type of furniture that they want to look at, like, the classroom. I know there's like at least, there's a handful at Melridge for sure, because I'm looking.
Oh,
There
yeah,
is,
we've
because
done like
yeah,
4 or
there's a
5
lot,
classrooms
yeah.
already at Melridge
Mhm.
over the course of the last couple of years.
Yeah, I just didn't know where they stood in light of their sister schools at Riverview Parkside as far as the furniture they have in any classroom regardless of personalized learning.
We did not do any large-scale purchasing of furniture because we didn't know what the facilities plan was.
Yeah.
You know what I mean, so we've
I
done.
just wanna
we-
keep
yeah.
that on the horizon going forward.
So
that-
as they get involved in these personalized learning and make the request as they're looking to do things differently in their classroom, that's when we've been
Yeah,
granting those
but-
requests.
We
Like
did
it.
explore when we opened Parkside or Review to purchase all new furniture for Buckeye and Melridge, and there wasn't, I don't know, I'll say this, but there wasn't really an appetite for it at the time, I
No.
guess,
Yeah.
from the current network.
Right.
Yeah, but what do you mean by that? I don't understand, an appetite like we weren't able to wanna finance it that way, or, yeah, I guess I need to understand.
Again, I think it was related to the facilities plan, and because we didn't know
Okay.
what the next
Yeah,
step was,
I think
to
it was the next
to invest
phase.
that money without knowing what our next steps
Okay.
were.
Because I think
Alright.
the original intent was, so when the building was being constructed, you know, we passed bond issue 16 in 2019, when the building was finalized. The original intent was to put that bond issue on in 2019
Yeah.
for the next phase. So it's like, why file it for
I
now?
get that.
And then
Okay,
we didn't do it in 2019 because we weren't quite sure the building was gonna be done in time, it was up to the deadline. And you gotta put it, levy on the ballot in August, and we weren't sure if we were gonna open in September. We were open the day after Labor Day, so we were like, let's wait till 2020. Then COVID happened, and then
yeah.
supply chain issues and everything else. and it's
Okay.
just-
I just wanna make sure we're consistent among the elementaries, and it isn't dependent on personalized learning that everybody has comparable furniture, whether it's Buckeye,
I've been-
Melridge.
I guess I would say it
Parkside.
is a little bit, because we're not just buying furniture for classrooms. You know what I
Okay.
mean? So when we put the new trailers up, we did buy the modulars. For the modulars, we bought furniture, you know what I mean, that they could use in there. But we're not just saying, okay, all kindergarten and first grade classrooms are getting new furniture. We're not doing that. So it is related, I guess, to say to the personalized learning in that, yes, I want to change the way I'm teaching in my classroom. Here's what I would like to do that. So
Okay.
I don't want, if a teacher asked for new furniture, I don't know that we would deny it, but until we know what we're doing, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like
well,
how we're moving
and we're
forward,
gonna have
yeah.
those discussions,
Yeah,
so I just
so-
wanna keep it on the radar.
Yep,
We
for
typically
that.
set aside $100,000 a year for furniture purchases throughout the district,
Okay.
based on each request.
So the furniture replacement at Lamouth, which is very nice, I saw it during my tour, was that just a general, everybody?
yeah, because of the
Yeah.
5th grade, yes, so those 5th grade classes, we had to replace, and they needed some specific things because
Okay.
they're a little bit more elementary, like
Yeah.
the kitty table, you know,
I
with the
get it.
gathering table.
And I
those
know
kinds
we
of
had to
things.
make the change in the
Yeah,
cafeteria.
and so
for
that
space
did not
reasons.
come out of technically the 100,000 that he sets aside,
Right.
correct, yeah.
We did.
That was, we need, just like we had to buy 5th grade music supplies for
Okay.
Lamouth, you know what I mean, that, we just needed it, because we have 5th grade there now.
Yeah, and obviously, as we go through this, facility thing, I just wanna keep the AC thing, cause we had some discussions down at the
That's more
conference.
PI.
That's all part of
That would
PI.
be PI.
So does that come through finance, or does that go through buildings and grounds? I just want clarification.
That's the gray area. Typically, it goes through buildings and grounds, but the financial piece, we talked about in both. per se, so,
Yeah.
you know, as plans are more developed, we can get more into the numbers of what those cost and what, you know, we can certainly review in both committees,
Right,
so it's,
okay.
That number is not, subject to the increase because it's a PI levy and so it's subject to House Bill 920 and it stays pretty consistent every year as to what we collect. So with the valuation increase, you're not going to see, because it's not part of inside millage.
Okay, well, I just wanna make sure we keep those things on the radar. Okay,
all right, so, you know, obviously looking at the forecast, we're deficit spending, you know, we started deficit spending last year with the healthcare increase and other increases, you know, we're projecting about a $2.3 million deficit spending this year, so that we have a pretty healthy cash balance compared to any other time in our history. So we'll start declining that cash balance over time. But as you can see, when we get to fiscal year 28 and 29, things don't look all that great, but that's not uncommon for a forecast. As we continue to make adjustments, if we make adjustments to healthcare and staffing levels, we'll look to reverse that some. I mean, the last operating levy was in 2017, so we're 7.5 years into that levy at this point, so that's pretty good for school districts, but obviously I remember, I think Jack Miley said at one time, you know, at an outcome, we better make it last 10 years, and so that's kind of been my goal, was to try to get to 10 years, which is pretty unusual for public
Yeah.
schools. Usually you're on the ballot more often than that.
yeah, especially with the
Obviously.
inflation we've had.
Obviously, we'll
Um,
continue to adjust as we go.
So, yeah, that figure looks that way now, but we don't know, like you say, there's a lot of factors, we don't know, you know, if this 28% does become more 29 or 30%, we
So that's,
don't know.
you're leading right into the next
Oh,
handout I passed
okay,
out, so.
next.
Because obviously, that's the biggest,
Okay,
biggest effect, so when the valuation increase truly affects 3 lines on the forecast. For the most part, your general property tax line, obviously that would increase as the value goes up. Public utility gets adjusted a little bit because we have a substitute levy which collects the same millage rate across all 3 classes of properties. You have class 1 residential, class 2 commercial, and then public utility. And so all 3 classes accept, it's the same rate across all 3, so the way the substitute levy works is it collects a certain dollar amount, so that millage gets adjusted to only collect that certain dollar amount.
Right.
So if residential goes up higher, then the public utility goes down a little bit, or vice versa. So you'll see slight adjustments in those lines between these different scenarios. And then the third line that's affected is state share of local property taxes at your homestead rollback reimbursements, because the state pays 10% of the levies that were passed prior to 2013. So on those older levies, if the amount collected on that levy goes up, that reimbursement goes up. So that's why
Okay.
those numbers will adjust. And technically, there's a 4th line that's affected, which is your state funding, but because we're on a guarantee, valuation increases don't really affect our state funding. But if we were a district that was not on a guarantee, as your values go up, you look richer to the state, so then your state funding would go down. But in our case, it goes unchanged. That's why I didn't include that in these scenarios. So it gets a little muddy when you get all the pieces together. So the first 3 sets of lines is showing the 28% increase in class 1 values. So the next set of lines, I just said, okay, compared to 0%, so what would the reappraisal really generate? 'Cause I think we've had some discussions and we've had some confusion on what those numbers look like. Based on the 20% increase, and you want to look at fiscal year 26, because 25, you're only seeing half of the
Yeah.
increase because of the difference in property in calendar years and fiscal years. So really, that 28% increase is really generating about $3 million in 2026. And that's among the 3 lines. So the property tax line is about $2.6 million increase, and the state share local property tax is about $400,000 or so, just rough math, looking at it. Let's say the valuation increase is only 27 instead of 28, that'd be about $234,000 difference. If the valuation increase, would say if it comes in at 29 instead of 28, it's about 234 the other way. And the 30% increase, I cut off the bottom line of the sheet so you can't see.
I know, because I was
So,
very sad as
let me
I was
pull-
looking at this, Gary.
Slowly,
Part of the math.
it's part of the math problem.
Is it probably another 200, so
It's probably another
460,000?
Probably another 230 some thousand.
460, 470.
Yeah. So every percent is
That was very
230 some
helpful.
thousand.
230?
About 234,000 is what our forecast model is,
For each percent.
each percent, yeah.
Okay.
This is a nice document, Gary, thank you.
Yeah.
I'd done that previously in the May forecast. which I
Well,
thought was
apparently I
helpful.
didn't pay attention to you then.
But it was more, it was much more unknown what it was gonna be, so we were looking at
Oh.
like 20, I forget exactly what we did, but it was a much bigger range of changes, like was it 32, was it
Oh.
28, was it 25?
Okay, maybe that's why I didn't pay attention.
It was,
This
you know,
is-
and that made real significant changes on, but now that we kind of know we're close to the 28, 29%.
Okay, that's good, thank you.
So did I confuse everybody yet?
No, I'm just super happy that I have to listen to this again.
Yeah, about 470,000
With slides.
difference, it's
That
like
have
30%.
lots of words and very small numbers. We're gonna work on
And I know we don't have the permanent improvement on there. I don't know, this was, I don't know what year this was. I mean, this was
That's our current fiscal
Current
year.
year.
Yeah, that's our appropriations for all funds.
for all funds,
Yeah.
okay.
So the 5-year forecast is only including.
And that's the
funds-
76 million,
Yes.
okay. And then you gave us another sheet where you showed there was like a payoff of, was it a loan on PI, or there was something that you shared when we were in the media center in the summer. I didn't bring it with me. I thought you were giving a report on PI at the time.
I think I did one of the updates I did was a permanent improvement fund
Right.
forecast update.
Okay.
I provided one at the last meeting as well.
Yeah.
And,
Okay,
I'm working on
so we're
another
good.
version of that, based on how we handle the Riverview edition and
Okay.
looking at different options.
All right.
Looks like
it.
you-
And Gary, you stayed within your time frame.
tried.
Nicely done.
I only have
found-
2 minutes at the board meeting on.
Yes,
next
that's
Monday.
it. You do the, the Reader's Digest version.
I won't go into that much detail at the board meeting, it'll be more general overview and.
This is covered then.
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So, I know we talked a little bit about not pursuing an advanced energy fund grant, but, you know, we heard a lot at the OSBA conference about, you know, some of the solar things, which is not out of sight expense-wise anymore, but as we look at, you know, whatever we're doing going forward with some of our, building projects that we, might look at, and even with existing, buildings that they're generating some savings. It seems to be the new thing, like when it used to be change your lighting and you'll save money. Well, they're still saying that as far as LED, that can really save wattage if you're looking at, let's say, putting in air conditioning that's gonna have a draw, but if you have old lighting like Melridge does, if LED was put in there, it might be a trade-off and you'd be okay without having to add. I mean, that was something we heard, right?
Yeah, each building has its own unique characteristics, and
Right.
you have to look at each one to see, but it's all focusing on how do you become more energy efficient, because energy costs are gonna do nothing but go up.
Yeah.
And, yeah,
Especially
we need to be
electric.
aware of, you know, how best to, save what we can in those areas.
I know with the grant, it's like, we had to pull our utility bills, and it's always fun, because we have a mixture of Haynesville City Power and
Oh, yeah.
Dominion Company, and on the gas side, we got Dominion and Northeast Ohio Gas, and we got Aqua Ohio and the county, and it's just like,
Mhm.
we can't just have one, you know, it's like, we have to get a mixture of everything, and.
Has there been a solar assessment done
Not
or
aware of.
something?
So there was,
Scott, yeah, there was somebody who came out to the 2 new buildings to look at it. I know that. I think that came back as a no-go.
yeah, there was,
Okay.
they only came back because they were looking at it with the roofs.
Right.
And it was one that, I think it was only the 2 new buildings would even remotely qualify.
Do you have any idea what the qualifiers were?
30-year roof, if they want so long on the life, like, that they can see from the roof, was a part of it, I know that.
Well, we'll find out. But here again, going forward, and just like with your homes, you know, get yourself weather tight.
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, thank you.